welcome to Mike Papp Golf Chat Live. It's our 4th edition, and we've got a very special evening planned. We've got Pat Wheeler here right now, and our very special guest, Don January, will be joining us shortly. This is live down in Dallas, Texas right now. So this has been long anticipated, and Pat, I'm so happy that we were able to put this together and you were able to bring your friend Don to join us. So thank you. Tell us a little about yourself and your radio show, and you know, a little bit about what you did down there in Dallas.
Well, Mike, thank you very much. And Don January is one of the icons of golf. He played during the Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus era. He also goes back to Sam Snead and Ben Hogan. We're going to get him in here in a minute, hopefully. He's, soon will be 90 years old in November, but he's a tough Texas guy, and he's doing real well. My show is Saturday morning from 8 until 9 a.m. on 1160 a.m. in Dallas.
What happened?
Which is also bigdtalk.com, bigdtalk.com. It's called Texas Links on the Air, and we talk about all things Texas on our golf show.
Okay. Now, I just lost your picture there, Pat, because I pushed a button.
Well, I'm seeing you just fine, Mike,
Okay.
and I'm seeing myself. I don't know if it'll show up on the show, but I wish I looked younger. But I've got to go with what I've got here.
Here we are.
You talk about just the irony or the interesting things about Don January. He played on 3 consecutive NCAA championship teams at the University of North Texas back in the early 50s. Before the University of Houston became the household word in college golf. He won his 12th start on the PGA Tour. Matthew Wolff just won his 3rd start. Only took Don 12 times to win. That was at the Dallas Open in his hometown. And he holed out of a bunker to win, very similar to Jordan Spieth, another Dallas golfer who got into a playoff to win his first tournament, the John Deere, 4 years ago the same way. Right? It could have been 5 years ago. I'm not sure. Maybe 6 years ago, whenever Jordan Spieth first won. 2015 was his great year, but he won his first tournament at the John Deere. I believe that was 2014.
Fantastic. Now, there were a couple of things we wanted to talk about, and we'll sort of outline it right now. There were some things that Don was very instrumental in the role he played in changing some things on the PGA Tour. And also things that we see today, and also he was instrumental in forming the senior PGA Tour. Is that correct? Yes,
I think it's a noteworthy career for Don. He won 10 times on the PGA Tour, including the 1967 PGA Championship. He won 23 times on the senior tour.
Wow.
And in 1961, he was involved on the Players Committee of the PGA of America, as opposed to the PGA Tour, which now, as you know, is mainly the Club Pros and the PGA Championship and also the Ryder Cup. He was involved in striking from their bylaws the horrible Caucasian rule, because Teddy Rhodes and Charlie Sifford were coming along, and a lot of the country clubs or whatever, we just had this segregated society. It seems so distant, but it really wasn't that long ago. And he was involved with getting that taken out of the bylaws. And then later in 1968, Don was on the committee again when the PGA Tour split off from the PGA of America, which has allowed it to flourish as we know it today. And then finally in 1980, after they had the Legends of Golf at Onion Creek in Austin, he was involved with, I think, 12 other guys, maybe 13 other guys, forming the senior tour. Guys like Gene Littler, Bob Golby, Dal Finstwall, those guys, along with Don January, formed the senior tour. In my opinion, he belongs in the World Golf Hall of Fame. My goodness, what a career, just being involved in the changes with pro golf.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a few individuals out there that is still kind of shocking to me that are not in the Hall of Fame. And I know there's regimen, there's rules and things like that, but it would seem to me if you won a major championship and you've won as many tournaments as he's won, and then been involved as he's been with administrative changes for the betterment of the game, which is what we see the PGA Tour as today and the Senior Tour as today. Well, I know we all got our fingers crossed, hoping that they find
Well,
him.
we're gonna try to go get him right now. But I just want to tell you, when you bring up like Charlie Sifford to Don January, he'll tear up sometime.
Okay.
He saw what those guys went through. He was right there with the front row seat. He stood up for them. Not only Charlie Sifford, but Pete Brown. There were others. Lee Elder. What a fantastic guy.
I just got connected with Pat when I was doing the writing and starting my website up, and he read something that I wrote about you, and then he contacted me and asked me to be on his radio show on March 3rd. And then I said, gee, I'd love to be able to return the favor if we ever do the Golf Chat Live. And of course, I'm returning. You're doing us a favor by being with us today.
Well, it's my pleasure.
So, Mr. January, why don't you tell us something about yourself? How did you start? I mean, you've had so many people that you played with. You knew Pat Harvey Penick. In fact, somebody already asked him about, there's a chapter and it says that you were Harvey Penick's easiest student ever.
Well, that's what they wrote in the book.
Yep.
That they went to Harvey and they said, you know, well, what did you do for him? And I was in the service, and it was 1955, and back then you had to wait 6 months to make a check if you got on tour. So I turned when I was still in the service, and where I could, when I did get out and start playing, if I wanted the money, I could take it. And in doing that, Harvey Penick signed my PGA cards. You had to have 2 Class A signed. He was one of them. And I went up to a little town where my dad was running a 9-hole golf course, and I was staying there trying to practice with, I had my wife and one boy then, and I decided, you know, I'm going to call Harvey down in Austin and have him look at me and have him ask me, I'm going to ask him, you know, what he thinks of me and my swing. And so I called him. He said, sure, come on down. So I went down there one day and went into the shop, and there was an Austin Country Club, and he was busy with somebody doing some business, and he said, go on up to the range and warm up, and I'll be up there in a minute. And so I went up, and back then you shot at a shagger. You didn't have a range, and you had a shag bag with some balls, and you emptied them out, and then he went out, and I shot at him all the time. So I went up there, and I warmed up, and I got all warm, and Harvey showed up, and he was one of those guys that had one of those little seats that had a handle on it. You could open it up, and so he parked in there behind me, and I hit 3 or 4 more shots, and he said, I had a 9-iron in my hand, and he said, why don't you try it with a 7? And so I got a 7, I hit a few shots, and he said, well, how about a 3? And I hit a few shots. And he said, now hit your driver. So I hit a few drivers, and I was concerned. I said, all he did was say, you know, he hit another club, and he never said a word about my swing. I said, Mr. Penick, you know, golly, is it that bad? He said, no, I said, just sack him up and go get him, boy. You'll do fine. Yep. And so that was a big plus for me, for a good teacher to see me swing and think it was all right. And of course, it was my swing, and it wasn't the best swing in the world, but it was mine. And I think that's one of the best things about starting, is that you can get all the lessons you want to from all the people you want to, but you still need to take with what you can do, not what they want you to do. Right. And consequently, I changed later, maybe in 61, I guess that I got a little closer to the ball and tucked my right elbow and threw actually a tip that Hogan had given me, and he didn't explain it all to me, and it took me five years to understand it. So I guess I was a little dumb, but it worked out where when I did do what he asked me to do, I tripled my earnings. So I think it was a pretty good tip.
Yep. Now, what were your best years of playing?
I was a very consistent player. I played the regular tour 20 years. I made $1.1 million.
Yeah.
So won 10 tournaments and a couple of Ryder Cups. Golly, had the low scoring average one year after I was 45.
I remember that.
And I went back on tour. I got off in 71 or 2, 72, I think it was. And I was in the golf course construction business, and it was good. And I'd been out there for 16 years, and I'd done all I wanted to do. And so I had no idea that I'd ever play again. And the recession of 74 came, and I had enough work to get through 74, but no jobs after that, and nobody had any jobs after that. So my wife said, you know, I was 45, and we still had 3 kids to put through college, and of course hadn't saved enough money to do that. And she said, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, the only thing I know to do is I used to play. So I'm going to go back. We got enough money, I can go for a year or so and see if I can make it back. And McCann, the money's improved, and you can make more money now. And I was very fortunate. I was able to get my game back, and I started in 1975. I won finally late that year. I won the Texas Open down in San Antonio back in September, October. And then that next spring, I won the Tournament of Champions again out of La Costa. I had won it the last time they held it in Vegas. I had won it there. So I was very pleased and very fortunate that I was able to get my game back and my talent back. And I actually became a better player, I think, the older I got. I know as you get older, your muscles atrophy and shorten. So my biggest fault in my swing was it was too long, but it was mine. So I just put up with the days I couldn't handle it too well.
Right.
I mean, as it got shorter, I didn't have those days anymore. So when we started the senior tour, I was a better player then than I was when I started the regular tour.
Yeah. And I remember you. I was a kid, and I don't know if you remember this, but you played in it was a corporate outing in Danbury, Connecticut at Ridgewood Country Club. It was about 1975. I started caddying there in 1974. I didn't even know anything about golf. My father heard that you, Johnny Potts, and Dave Marr were going to be playing in the event. It was a Republic Foil outing, and he took us to the club. And I met up with you on the 13th hole, which is a par 3, and you were talking, having a cigarette. And I just remember you being a tall, wiry, muscular-armed, sinewy guy. And one of the people that were following your group was chatting with you. And I remember you saying, well, this year I get a raise because my daughter's graduating college. And I remember that. And you had a spotter out front with a walkie-talkie and somebody with you. And you'd probably never seen the golf course before. 13 was no easy par 3. And I never saw a tour player hit it like that. Well, I never saw a tour player before. And you got up, smashed it on the green. Then we went down and followed you on the 14th hole, dogleg par 4. And I think you hit a forward. And the guy up the front said, just hit it right here. You knocked it, smashed it. I love the way you hit the ball. I think we only followed for a few holes, but I heard you shot, never seen the place before. It was 67 or 68. And I didn't see Dave Martin. I didn't see Johnny Potts, but I saw you. But I always remember you said, yeah, well, this year I get a raise because my daughter's graduating from college. And it was just about after that is when you went back out for your second career. And then I started following you. You won the Varden scoring trophy. And I didn't know you won the 67 PGA Championship. But I started watching you on TV and seeing you win some tournaments, and you were always on TV. So I was like, wow, I remember that guy a couple of years ago, and there he is back out there again. The announcers used to call you Old Bones. So,
old bones and a lot of things that you can't say in public.
Right. Well, so there's some other things that we wanted to talk to you about, and these are things that nobody ever hears about, but I understand that you were involved with some pretty important decisions that made the PGA Tour what it is today. And starting back in the early 60s, during the very, very sensitive racial times in America, you were pretty instrumental with other people in getting this Caucasian rule out of the PGA. Would you like to share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that came about in, I think, 1961. I know that back then you had to have 5 years of tenure on the tour before you could be a member of the PGA, and you couldn't hold any kind of offices or anything until then. And so the tour was actually part of the PGA, and it's called the Tournament Bureau. And it consisted of, who run it was the 3 members of the staff of the elected staff of the PGA of America and 4 players. And those players were elected 2 every year. So you had a 2-year run. And then one of those 2 actually ran the whole deal for that 1 year. And actually it would be like the commissioner's job. I know the year that I ran it was a year that we had trouble about, actually down in Houston. We had the trouble with the NAACP, and that Charlie, I call him Charlie Brown, but his name was Charlie Sifford, and he was one of our better black players, and he couldn't play certain places, and he could play in Houston, but then I know they called me and got on me because I was the head of the tournament bureau. So I called Charlie in Houston. I said, Charlie, what the hell went on? He said, well, he called me Ranger for Texas Ranger. And so he said, Ranger, said, I had my parking sticker, I had my badge to get in and everything there, and the policeman wouldn't let me in the gate. And finally he said, if you don't get your black ass out of here, I'm going to put you in jail. So he said I backed out and went around and found a way to sneak in through the course with his car and was able to play. And I don't blame Charlie. So I called him. I said, look, Charlie, they're on top of me, and I can't do anything until October when we had the national meeting. And this was like in February or March when we played in Houston. And he said, well, Ranger, they're on top of me too. And I said, well, just hang on. I'll get it out of there. Well, it was a very difficult job, and it was so unwarranted that it was in there to start with. I can't believe that it stayed in there all those years and was even put in to start with. So it was very difficult, and I enjoyed my association with Charlie Sifford. We became a good friend, and we got the blacks where they could play everywhere. And I know that later on, because of all of this and the other troubles we had around with the players, with the PGA and their home pros, I was the one that suggested that we go on our own, run our own business. And I did that after I had it for that 1 year in '61. And then it took 5 or 6 years, and they finally got a committee together that saw what I had seen that year, and they saw where we really needed to run our own business. The only thing we had in common with the home pro is that we loved golf. And we played a game out there, and they serviced members of the club. So it's a complete different deal. And I know that the year that we split, the press just killed the tour. Golly, they just called us money hungry, you know what, and it was ridiculous the way it was held and was seen. And I know that when it was all said and done, the next year, the PGA had 1 tournament on their tour, and we had 28 on ours. And sure enough, and a lot of people don't know this, that 1 tour tournament was up in Michigan or somewhere. I didn't go play in it, but then it ended up that he had won it, and it was still the PGA, and they wouldn't pay the purse. So the purse was played by the PGA Tour and not the PGA at the time. And so, there was some animosity and things going on, and as any split is going to have, but it was the right thing to do, and it was the best thing for the game of golf, and that was what I was concerned about.
Right.
And to go further in it, after I came back on tour, well, then Ed Raphael and Jimmy Demerit started the Legends of Golf, and that gave us an idea that maybe at 50 and over, there's a market for us, and we still could play pretty good, but we had trouble beating the 25-year-old, and so we started the senior tour, and I played the regular tour for 20 years, and I played the senior tour for 19. Wow. And the money was a lot better on the senior tour, so it was fine.
How many events did you win on the senior tour?
22, they say. I'm not really sure. I didn't keep up with it. I had a different attitude about the whole thing. I used to do a thing at the first of the year. I'd make a goal of how much money I wanted to make, and I predicated that against what I was going to spend and how much I needed to support my family and send the kids to school and all the other things that are necessary. And so I came up with a figure each year, and to make me work a little harder, I'd always go to the bank and borrow some money. And my wife said, "Well, what are you doing going and borrowing that money?" And I said, "It makes me play harder because I've got to pay it back. So I'm a little lazy." So that made me get after it, and I played better. And when I made that amount of money, I went home. Now, sometimes I was home in July, and other times I was still out there in November trying to make that money. So it just depends on how I played and how hard I worked. And that's normal for tour players. You have to learn yourself. You have to learn what's good for you and what isn't. And, you know, some people can have one drink at dinner and some people can have 5.
Right.
And, you know, or some really don't need any. And it's all individual.
Right.
It took me a while to learn myself. And once I made X amount of dollars, I got the hell out and came home. And that's the only regret I ever had about playing was it kept me away from my family too much. And I didn't like that. And my wife, bless her heart, she did a wonderful job. She raised our 3 kids, and they were 3 good kids. And I lost her about 10 years ago. And,
Sorry.
Well, you know, at part of the time she was 77, I guess, when she went down, and I was, you know, 80. And in fact, I'll be 90 in November.
God bless you.
And I was the same age. In fact, I was born in November. He was born in September of 29. And I love the needle in. Gosh, he was a great man and did so much for golf and everything else too. But then when we got to senior tour, and he wouldn't come play with us the first 2 or 3 years, and he thought it was going to be a success, so he came out and started playing. And as we'd go to the practice range, and there'd be a bunch of gallery around watching us hit, I'd be hitting, and then he'd walk up on it. And of course, he always had an entourage with him, and the people all clapped and everything. And so I'd holler over at him. I'd say, "Arnie, sure am glad you showed up." He said, "Well, why?" I said, "Now, I'm not the oldest son of a bitch here." He didn't like that too much, but we were great friends. Gosh, what a good man. What a good man.
You know, I never heard a bad thing about him.
No.
In fact, it was a very sad. When he passed away 4 years ago or so, it hit me. I never thought he would die. It surprised me. I just felt like he'd never die. That's the impression.
He had that kind of personality, and he showed it, and he did the things necessary for it, and he did them ungrudgingly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so there's a couple of questions. With the group that I have, we got a lot of people from the Dallas area, and one person, well, I think I asked this earlier, but that was before we went out. But somebody wanted me to ask you about your skins game at the Plano Muni in Dallas. So they, and again, we couldn't hear each other well, but do you remember Dalton McCreary?
The name sounds familiar, but you know, golly, that was what, 30, 40 years ago. So sometimes I can't even remember my own name.
Dalton did straight shooting golf. He did the infomercial, or he had his own videos that he did back in the early 90s. And he's a Dallas guy. And he used to play in your skins game. And he asked me, "Would you please ask me if he remembers me?" I said, "He'll remember. Who could forget you?" So, he said he was playing with you one day, and if I got the story right, one cart was over this way, one cart was over that way, and he was waiting for a club to come. And you said to him, "Come on, Dalton, hit the ball." He goes, "Well, I don't have my club." He goes, "Well, use this one." You gave him your club. And up to that point, he was 6'4". He didn't know anything about upright, flat, or anything like that. And when he put your club on the ground, which you're noted for having very upright clubs, that's the other questions. They used to say we're 6 degrees upright or something. There's more people.
3.
The guys used to play for 3. Well, Dalton said he took a swing with your club and never hit a shot so good in his life. And as soon as he got back to the shop, he started banging his clubs upright. And he said it changed his life forever. Golf was different after that.
Well, good. I'm glad it helped him.
Well, he's going to watch this because he asked me. I said, "I wrote it down, Dalton. Who could forget you?" But I'll say he didn't really forget you. You just can't think of you right now. I'm trying to think of some of the other things. He already said that. Well, you talked about the senior tour. Was there any, these are kind of questions that regulars want to know about. Was there, I know you won the 67 PGA Championship. What was the most special moment you can remember on tour, whether it be playing or who it was? You said Charlie Sifford and you were very good friends. Was there anybody else that made an impression on you, or you made an impression on during your years out there that you could think of?
Well, there were people that I played practice rounds with and went to dinner with and became good friends with, and Miller Barber was one. He was an old Texas boy from Texarkana. Played at Arkansas, and I got on the senior tour. Mike Hill and I became good friends, and Mike came out, and he and his brother were very successful on tour, and Mike was very successful on the senior tour.
I remember.
So yeah, when I first started, there was a kid from Fort Worth named Ernie Vossler that he played on tour and won a couple of tournaments and then got off. He and I shared rooms and cars together. And then when he quit and took a club job, another Fort Worth boy, Doug Higgins, and we did the same thing for a couple of years. And back then the money was so little that you had to have 2 in a car or 3 in a car or 2 or 3 in a room.
Right.
And because, we played for, like 7,500, 10,000 complete purse each week.
Right.
And, they had 30 money spots, and 21 through 30 was $100. So you didn't have a lot of money to spend. Right. And so we still had, money to send home and keep that family together. Ernie had 4 or 5 kids, and I ended up having 3, and Doug had like 3 or 4. So, it was a business, and you had to handle certain things. So you ended up running with people that were known to you and close to you and probably lived close together. Right. Both those boys were from Fort Worth, and I was from Dallas. And at that time, I lived in Eastland, my wife's home, because I wanted her around some of her kinfolks when I was gone all the time. And so it's part of the deal. I didn't like it, and I know that one of the things I regret was, being away from them. And would I have changed it? No, I don't think I would have. But then that was the situation. That's just the way it was about.
Did you play much golf internationally, or did you try? Did you?
No, I never went and played at the British Open, because if you went over and won, you still lost money. It cost more to go over and play than what they had in prize money. And occasionally, once we got up later, it would be in the 70s and 80s. The foreign market got better. Some places, kind of like Japan, played well. They paid well also. They get you over and take care of you and give you a fee for coming, and then it's whatever you won, you got that too. Yeah. So it made it quite lucrative. And normally the guys that did well in the fall, they'd go there in Australia and different places. But I played the Caribbean. I played a little in South America, what we call the Caribbean tour in the wintertime. They played Panama, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, and Jamaica. I did that for a couple of winters, for a month, and played for about the same amount of money, and had a lot less good players. You could make some money, and it gave you a chance to work on your game before the summer came, because summer was when we won up east, and they played for 20, 25, and 30,000 a week. So you had to primp yourself with that.
Right.
And you finally learned where to go. I know I learned in hard ground, and I found out I played better in hard ground, and I played up east all right for a while, and because they didn't have watered fairways either, but that bent grass in the Kentucky Blue was not the kind of Bermuda I grew up on, and I took divots up there that you could bury small dogs in, and the ball still didn't go where I was looking. So I just finally learned that just don't go back. Yeah. I played not Florida, but fact, I took Florida out one time because they had all that sandy stuff down there. And he finally got a hybrid Bermuda, which is a tighter net, and the ball set up and didn't sink down in. And then I played better, so I put Florida back in the schedule.
Yep.
I played Texas, Arizona, California, Hawaii. It's just where they had hard ground, and I could handle myself in it very well.
Well, that's great. Any other thoughts? Anything? I think we've just been allowed to run a little longer. Are there any thoughts? Any stories? Anything you'd like to add? Or did I wind you there? You're all pooped out.
Well, no, I'm not pooped out, but it's been nice. I've enjoyed your questions, and thank you for having me on. And I'm sorry that we had some difficulties to start with, and I'm glad you got them worked out.
Well, it wasn't me. I got a technical expert because I need a teacher and all this stuff too. I don't know anything about computers, but we got us back on track.
It was nice enough for Pat to ask me. Pat's a friend of mine, and he has a radio show here, and we do it a couple of times a year. And also he plays in some little deal, and one of my sons plays with him. Yeah. And so it's nice to be included in some of his things, and I appreciate that.
Well, it's been tremendous having you on, and nothing. A little bump in the road is nothing, but everything went beautifully now, and now we got a chance to hear you. And I know everybody's going to enjoy this when we put that out. As soon as the show is over, we're going to put it up, and you could go back and take a look at how great you did. So this is where I always announce our next guest next week. I have Matthias Gronberg joining us next Wednesday.